All right. So good evening, everyone. As you can see, this is what we're going to do. As usual, we need someone to volunteer that will read for us. So would someone online volunteer to please read for us, we would greatly appreciate it. Okay. Who was that?
Evelyn Show.
Oh, okay. Well done. Good evening. All right. So we are starting a new Bible study today, and the title is Spiritual Warfare. It's based off of 2 sermons that Spurgeon, the famous Baptist pastor, preached. So what we would do as our practice is that we would aim to do 1 chapter in 2 Mondays. So we are starting lesson 1. So we aim to do lesson 1 in 2 Mondays, lesson 2 in 2 Mondays, and on and on and on and on, as we usually do. And as our standard practice, we would have someone online read for us. And after the person reads, I'll make general comments on the paragraph. So we'll read 1 paragraph at a time. Someone online will read for us, and I'll make general comments on the paragraphs. And then if you have any questions, you can ask your questions after my comments, and then we'll go on to the next. And then at the end, we would ask, there's some study questions at the back of the book. Okay, I saw that. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. I need to try and see how I can zoom my screen more. Is there anybody who is technologically advanced here that can help me? Okay, yeah, okay, I found it. I'm amazed. I found it out myself. A miracle. Like I'm not. Is it bigger? It's for the people online, is it bigger? Trying to zoom it. I don't know whether it's big. No. Someone online say whether it appears bigger. Okay, it's bigger for sure. It's bigger. It's bigger now. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So. Okay. So what we will do, Evelyn, as usual, you please just read from the beginning, and then we'll go on.
Should I start now?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. 1, introduction. How very uncertain are all things on earth. How foolish is the believer who stores up his treasure anywhere except in heaven. Job's prosperity promised as much stability as anything can under the sun. The man had round about him a large household, accumulated wealth, and a large farming operation, which provided more than the needed food and clothing. His children were numerous enough to promise a long line of descendants. His prosperity lacked nothing. Where was the cause that could take it away?
All right, so thank you. So this introduces us, of course, to the famous story of Job. We've done it before in this Bible study some years ago. And one of the central lessons of the book of Job is the uncertainty of material possessions, of just all we see around us. We've seen people that were this high on day 1, and the next day they were nothing. And so again, is that what is stressed in that story is the uncertainty of life. And obviously we have the example of our brother that just 1 week before was with us, and then next day we hate. And for a lot of people, when they spoke to me, that's what they just kept saying, that, I saw this person, not someone that was, but that's the point. That life is by definition very uncertain, and you can see someone at 5 minutes that everything has changed, and then something else that Spurgeon emphasizes, the foolishness of storing up. So Jesus emphasizes that whole point of the foolishness of human wisdom, because human wisdom has to do with storing up. So any asset manager, what do they talk to you about? Talk to you about storing up wealth, about savings, about bonds, about investment, the education of the portfolio. All of these things is try to reduce risk. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good to do those things, but it's not to put your trust on them, because everything can really go at once, and so even no matter how wise you think you are, how well you think you've diversified your stuff, the only place you can be certain that you can keep it safe is where? Heaven, exactly. So heaven is the one place, as we'll see later, where you can keep things safe. So, and it then highlights the point of, if you are looking at numbers, Job was the kind of person that was highly diversified and had numbers. So if he had farming operations, he had sheep, he had camels, was donkeys or something else, or something. He had different things. So it wasn't, all his eggs wasn't just one basket. You know what I mean? And then he had the ones, multiple streams of income. Exactly. So he has read all the books. He had multiple streams of income. So he had everything. And even children, he had 10. So you believe that if I have one, something can happen. And not 10. How can anything happen? So you just think that, yes. That's a good question. So, but I came asked, how can you stay Australia in heaven? So it's a metaphor. The metaphor is a big word. So it's just simply saying it's a figure of speech, it's some way of describing. So for example, now, let me think. So sometimes you hear parents say, my children is my retirement plan. But it's the child money. It's not. So what they mean is that I'm going to add so much value. I'm going to spend so much money training up this child that when that child grows up, that child can help me. So the same way. So you're going to spend so much of your money on heavenly things, on your time and energy. So for example, you have 100 naira. So if you talk to an investment planner will tell you, you put 20 naira in this, you put 30 naira in this. But as a Christian, you can say, I want to put 30 naira, I want to give it to the church. So it's like you wasted your money. 30 naira you could have invested, you're giving it to the church. But you have done what you've invested it in heaven. So obviously there's no bank account in heaven, but in the sense that you've given it to God, knowing that God knows your heart, and God who knows your heart would reward you and keep you and provide for you. It's not like you give him 20 naira, he's going to give you 200 naira. No, that's not. It's just that you know that he will provide for you, even though you are not, quote unquote, being smart and saving. You are trusting God and giving it to God and to his purposes. So, yeah. And so Job had many children. He has stability, So and Spurgeon highlights a couple of things: the large number of households, the fact that he had accumulated wealth. So there's a difference between having wealth and accumulated wealth. Accumulated wealth gives you time. If something goes wrong, you've had enough in store that you can at least take some shock. He had family operation, everything. So if anybody was to look at him, there's no way you would think, anything can take what he had away. And when I was reading that, I remember the story of Ahab. When Ahab died, Ahab was the second in the line. So his father Omri had been the one who took over the throne. Ahab had come. After Ahab, 2 sons came. We had the first son that took over, that died. He fell down from the lattice, had an injury and died. And then the second son took over, and he had 70 other sons apart from that. So his dynasty was secured. So it was like, even if number 1 died, he had the number 2. If number 2 died, they didn't even kill as many. I have 70. But God killed all 70 one day. So again, you just see that what we men, what we boast in, and what he did, he distributed them among all the leading men of Samaria. So that even if one guy falls out with him, he has many people. Look, all of these things that we plan and all our strategies and all the things you think you've done to make sure you are okay, God can just undo it in 5 minutes. So again, is that sense of, let's not put our trust in anything except in God, who cannot fail. All right, next paragraph.
Up there, beyond the clouds, where no human eye could see, there was a scene enacted that foretold no good to Job's. Let me make it bigger. No good to Job's prosperity. The spirit of evil stood face to face with the infinite spirit of all good. An extraordinary conversation took place between these two beings. When called to account for his doings, the evil one boasted that he had gone to and fro throughout the earth. Job 1:7. This implies that he had met with no hindrance to his will and found no one to oppose his freely moving and acting at his own pleasure. He had marched everywhere like a king in his own dominion, unhindered and unchallenged. When the great God reminded Satan that there was at least one place among men where he had no foothold and where his power was unrecognized, namely in the heart of Job, that there was one man who stood like an undefeatable castle, protected by integrity and perfectly loyal to the King of heaven. The evil one challenged Jehovah to test the faithfulness of Job and told him that the patriarch's integrity was due to his prosperity, that he served God and avoided evil from selfish motives, only because he found his conduct profitable to himself.
I mean, this is a very scary and difficult passage and a paragraph I'll explain. You see, the conversation that happened between Satan and God, Job did not know. So you see, Job did not write this book of Job. So that conversation, Job only knew about it when he got to heaven. So all that happened, Job had no idea. He was just living his life, and everything that was happening is you and I that know it was best. Since I was talking to God, this he cannot do up to this. But Job had zero idea. And the reason I say it's scary is that it just shows you and I how little we know of spiritual realities. You live your life, you wake up in the morning today, you don't know what will happen today. You have zero idea whether it will be a good day, whether they'll call you and say, Gary is looking for you in Ashura, or whether they'll come and meet you that DPO that somebody has reported in the police. So you don't know. You just go and you just make lots and lots of assumptions. But I mean, the examples I even gave are bad examples. You don't even know spiritual realities. You don't know what is going on in heaven. We don't know what is going on in the minds of Satan. We don't know what God is going to allow to happen to us, because one of the things, as much as Job is scary, one of the things that is also comforting around is what Satan said the time he saw Job. God, he said, have you not put what? A hedge around him. And for me, that whenever I think about that verse, it's very comforting, because it meant Satan has tried. You understand what I mean? He has tried and he has seen that he couldn't get near Job because God has put a hedge. That means whatever happened to Job was because God allowed it. And that is, so we don't, it was Billy Graham that used to say something. He used to say, he will start asking you to do what's an opposite. He'll tell you, when he's doing his crusade, he'll tell you, white, tall, man, God. And he will say no. That because God is not on the same level as Satan, because God is the creator God. But Satan is the created being. And whatever Satan can do, Satan must seek permission from God. Satan could not do anything, could not go anywhere, could not touch anything of Job unless God gave him permission. So that's the comforting part. But there are many things that are not comforting there. Because you see, whenever you read that thing, the first question that comes to the natural man's mind is why? How would God allow? You know, but at the end of the day, it's a foolish question, because you don't know the why, and you're just asking something that there is no answer to. But then the real issue at the heart of Job is there is no way for you. So let me say this. Why is it that people, when they become rich, they always want to remember those who were there with them when they were poor? Why? And they always want to surround themselves with those people. Why? They can find better people. Well, no, because they sort of know that this person is my real friend. Because when I'm rich now, I have many friends. Because, believe me, today, if they appoint you a commissioner today, you'll be amazed your secondary school friends that will show up. People you've not heard from. I can never forget. There was one time someone in my family became something, and I went to open the gate. And I said, open the gate. And someone came. My father said, no, I wasn't the one that opened the gate. My younger brother opened the gate. And this was, my father said, and the man came in, and my father said, I've not seen that man since I left the University of Ife. And that was, my father left Ife in 1970. He said, I've not seen that man since 1970. And the man came to our house because he knew my father could get him access to someone, you know, and that's what will happen. If you ever get into anywhere, those people will be sure. You get my point? So the point is, that's why people keep close. And so the real question is, how does God prove that Job loves him? There's no way except by taking this thing away. There's just no way to prove it. Because how do you know? We always say, that friend was the friend in need. I mean, so a friend in need is a friend indeed. But the point is, if you don't have any need, you just think everybody's your friend now. Until when there's a need, you start calling someone, the guy's number never goes through. And you say, that one is not. So as much as I can't say I know the reason why God allowed, but it's true that there's no way to prove whether it is true whether Job loves God, except for God to allow Satan to show. And again, remember, Job didn't know all of this. In the naturalness of the circumstances, for Job's heart to be revealed for what was actually in it, not because he knew. Because if he knew God was testing him, then the whole point failed. Just like the way Abraham, if God had told Abraham that, don't worry, once you lift up your hand, I will tell you, stop. Exactly. Exactly. But you get the point. If the point of it is, you can't know, because if you know, then, and it's for you and I, you can't know whether what God will allow you to do. But if God was tell you, okay, I'm going to allow you to go through this problem, don't worry, it's 6 months. After 6 months, and then one time my dad had a problem, and my mom went by and see one white garment guy somewhere. And the guy said, I see a solution. Far at the end of the tunnel, I can see light, but I thought that so I mean, God doesn't work that way. Not like he will tell you this is how long it will be, you have to wait. No, it just asks you to trust him and to know that whatever he brings our way, that he knows. But I want to stress one particular thing. Satan's challenge was this, that Job was serving God because it was good for Job to serve God. And that is the prosperity gospel. Essentially, the prosperity gospel tells us to serve God because it's good to serve God. And Satan goes to God and says, Job is serving you because it's good to serve him. Now, what is Satan's implication? That it is not a real love. I mean, so why is it that we think it's good to tell people to serve God because it pays them? You get what I mean? Because that Satan is saying, if you are serving God because it pays you, then it's not a real love. But we tell people serve God, it pays. I mean, people say it now, it pays to serve God. I mean, what did you want to say? Exactly. Yeah, you can't do business with God and you come short. God will. There's a sense in which it's true. There's a sense in which, and you also don't want to take away that sense. Yeah. Yeah, I know. What I'm saying is the sense in which it's true. We serve God because we know it's worth it. But we are not saying it will be worth it all the time. We know it will be worth it in the long run. And what's the long run? The long run, it might be after your death. The long run is not, I remember when people used to preach the story of Joseph. They used to say, just wait, you're almost, exactly. You're almost, you're at the end, is the darkest night. Breakthrough is about to come. Pharaoh is about to call you. And that was always, they always have to be, exactly, always have to be happy. Now, I'm not saying God doesn't give us breakthrough. Please don't hear me wrong. I'm saying that if our faith is based only on that we must get that breakthrough and God must give us more than we give him, and things must go well for us, and if things are not going well, then this is not the God I'm serving, and all of those things. So again, it's just for us to think about those things. Yeah.
Major Christianity are our gains. That means we're measuring, how we serve God or how we should serve God and how much gain. That's what I'm saying. Satan was accusing God that, because of what Job gains, that is why he's so loyal to God. And I say, God is saying, I'll show you that it's not so. So, okay.
Yes, okay.
I think this this thing is a bit tricky. I think I listened to this sermon by C H Spurgeon.
Okay.
In a way, we like to think that we serve God or we love God for no benefit at all, but we know that it's good to serve God and there's eternal benefit.
Yes.
We know.
Yes.
So in a way, we know that even though whatever we come in this world become, but we know that the treasures are in heaven. So there's someone that's
so let me try and explain it this way. So I married my wife because I saw something lovely. So I mean, when I was not married, there were many women, Abby, and out of all the many women, I saw something lovable about her, Abby. So imagine as I married her now, and will I be a good man if this man is not looking as fresh as before? Why should I should know that like the way she was before? And I say, you don't come and meet me and say, why are you taking another woman? I say, it's not like I don't love you, but you are not the way I met you. I need, obviously, my point is, there are benefits to serving God. But if you only serve God when you see that benefits, then it's not love. The same way, if you only love your wife, or love your parent, or love whoever you claim you love in this world when it is easy. Yeah, so you get what I mean? So everybody loves everybody when it's easy. So it's when your parents are sick, you have to go to the hospital, all your salary, you're spending it there. It's when you stay that you can say it's love. You get what I mean? So it's the same with God. So obviously we know, we believe in God for eternal life. We believe that God loved us before we loved him, that in Christ, he came and called us when we did not know him. But then the point is that if you are only in it, as long as everything looks smooth and dandy, and once things are not working, say, let's go and try the one that is working. So they said this one is not working again. Let's go and try that one. So again, it's just measuring our relationship by what we get. That's basically what we are saying. So Satan is saying that because you've made Job so wealthy, because what God said, God is the one that brought up Job and said, Job is a unique man. He is someone that you can find no iniquity in. And Satan's answer was, the reason why he's doing all of that is that he believes the more he does that, the more you bless him. You get what I mean? So it's a transactional relationship. So Satan is in it, Job is in it, because he knows the only I am, the more, every day of fasting, I get 5 sheep, that kind of mindset, and that's what God is. And that's why I'm saying that we want to be careful that we don't promise people, serve God so you get things kind of faith.
My question.
Yeah.
When you say Job was unique, that's why it was perfect.
Not perfect.
It was
the righteous man that got to find. Yeah. So 3 times in the Bible, in the book of Job, twice God says about him that Job was an upright man who feared God and who turned away from evil. So again, does that mean Job was a sinless man? Of course not. Even in the book of Job, we see him sin many times with his words. But the point is, in all the people of the earth, when God wanted to point out to someone living a righteous life, he point out to Job, essentially. What he saying?
Not the scripture. Is the one saying is good.
Yes, it's God will speak.
They said Noah.
Right. Yeah.
And the final analysis of serving transactional relationship, because it's actually worshiping God, because it's worshiping himself based on, because that is what you want to get.
Okay.
So it's not like if you're worshiping God and like you said, and then you want to get something, it's not God you're worshiping, you're using God as a means and end. Yeah. So your end is the person you're worshiping, but it seems God will drive you to where you're going.
Yes.
So I just want to make my own contribution. So I'm just considering this this statement to and fro. And Bible says throughout your ends. I'm just looking at, as Pastor Spurgeon explained, the vast expanse of the devil's dominion over the whole earth and all that, and it's walking to and fro. And it's not just like something he did the Old Testament. Peter would still warn that he should be careful and all that, that the devil is walking like a roaring lion, seeking whom to devour and all that. And then the place of the Bible saying that we shouldn't break the hedge, because what kept Job in a sense is because the Lord made a hedge over him. And in Ecclesiastes we are told not to break the hedge, because if we break the hedge, the Satan The serpent.
I don't know. Where is that in the classes? I
think it's in the.
Is it in that sense of spiritual hedge? Or?
Yes, that's more like a question I want to ask.
Yeah, you always use it.
So I want to ask that.
I've never studied that one. No, it's pointing about, trying to see is the exercises one applicable, or that we shouldn't bring
yes.
So I think God is I don't know that verse well, so I can't comment on whether that verse is a good interpretation, whether that interpretation is a good use of that verse. But at the end of the day, it's God that keeps us, So there's a sense in which you keep yourself in the love of God. So the Bible says keep yourself in the love of God. So there's a way in which you also are the kind of person that God keeps you. You are not deliberately, just like you put your child somewhere and the child is trying to put his hand in fire. You get what I mean? So the sense in which obviously we keep ourselves in the love of God, but also the sense in which it's God who protects and keeps us. I don't know where.
I remember this thing I'm digressing now where in Matthew 18, say give him up to Satan. Like if you after
they're trying
to send you out. So it's like you have gone out of God's purview in sense of protection. So maybe that's also is possible. The age you have.
Paul said in 1 Corinthians 5,
yes.
You hand him over to
Satan. Yes. That means you are exposed.
Yes.
I don't know how to put my own question. I'm going to try and see how I can do that. It needs to be that Job was actually accusing God right before God.
Job. Yes. Or Satan.
Satan, sorry.
Yes, that's what Satan was.
And he also accused Job.
Yes. So Satan, the word Satan, you know what it is? Yes, exactly. That is what now. Satan just means the adversary. It just means the adversary. And his job, Revelation 12 tells us the one who accuses the brethren day and night. It's a full-time job, day and night. Yeah. So anytime he shows up, he's accusing someone of not.
I don't know whether it's a sense, maybe because he told God after God had said, saying there is no one like him, he's blameless and shone sacred. And then Satan now tells God, strike him with your hand.
Okay, but that's the second part now.
Yes.
We'll get to that one. We're still in the first one when it's just his family and his children.
So someone I want to ask, do you have any more explanation on the realm of that part? Sons of God coming together, we meeting.
Okay, yeah. So we did it when we did it when we looked at Job. So this is my interpretation, and I know not everybody agrees. Let me tell you my interpretation is that God. The Bible talks about in Psalm 8, I believe, where it talks about, the heavenly council and talks about, the sons of God. And my impression is, at the end of the day, whether it's powers, principalities, stones, dominions, whatever you call, they're all created beings. And they're all means by which God rules the affairs of men. So even Satan can only do what God permits him to do. So my impression is that there's a sense in which even the demonic powers have a role to play in the government of the world. Now, I also think that Revelations, I think it's 12 or 20, Revelations 12, where it describes that great battle. My impression is that substituted until that great. So after Christ has done the work he did, Revelation 12 tells us that Satan is then cast down. So my impression is something changes in Revelation 12. You get what I mean? So before Revelation 12, because Job is before Revelation 12, and he's talking about how God governed the world. But once, because what you have to remember is that there's no more fight. Yes, there's going to be the Armageddon, the fight at Megiddo, the final, but the outcome is certain. There is no doubt about it. It's just like saying the only thing that is uncertain is the time, but the outcome is certain. So because once they've had that fight, which is Revelation 12, where it talks about, that fight of the serpent in heaven, and then once it's defeated and thrown down, I think that the battle in a sense over. So my impression is before whatever that time is of Revelation 12, there was this sons of God type of arrangement. But since then, in the time we are now, there is no, I don't think it works. Yes.
Yeah, so I think if I heard you well, you said the existence of Job precedes this Revelation 12, right?
I think so. I think so.
Maybe I think I have this slight different.
Yeah. I mean,
I think this happened.
Okay, before the
prior to, before Genesis 1.
So, but if you look at it that way, because it talks about the woman who was giving birth to the church. The woman is the church who was giving birth to Christ, and talks about again. There is the one who is to be ruled, who is to rule. Verse 5 says, "Who is to rule the nation with the rod of iron." You know, so my impression is, again, it can't be, because if you look at verse 7, war in the heavens. Verse 7, war in the heaven can't be before the foundation of the earth. So if you look at verse 7, when they are fighting, can't be. My impression is, can it be that Satan and the angels are fighting before, and you know, because look at what it says, verse 9. Look at verse 9. It says, "And a great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, that destroys the whole world, was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." And then that's why he was angry and started. So it talks about another phase. So there's a phase in which he has always been that ancient. So he's telling you that this was, because he's describing who he was the same serpent that appeared in the garden. You understand what I mean? It's the same person. Is that same ancient serpent, is the one who has been, you know, deceiving people, is the one who is the Satan and the devil. And now he was thrown down, and now he has a short time, and that's why he's so angry now. So again, my own impression is the shortness of time is because the battle has been won. He knows very soon he would be rounded up, so he has a short time. But again, look, it's not, I might be wrong, but that's how I understand how God, because otherwise, how can I don't see, in the realm we are now, I don't see Satan being able to go into the presence of God. And again, but I might be wrong. But yeah.
So I feel like it's very possible. It happens at the same time. So that when it's happening here.
Well, maybe time is different.
Yeah, but it's happening, yeah.
Yeah, but
sorry.
yes.
I just want to keep quiet, then I will still discuss this.
Okay.
That's what I'm just saying.
So, I sort of like your point. So I'm thinking that would it be that a situation like I think that's the first Kings of Chronicles where yes, Micaiah, in the situation of Micaiah, yes, where the same imagery you see the Lord in heavenly council who will come around and
it's an evil spirit from the Lord.
Exactly. Yeah, so meaning that even in the heavenly council, various spirits are allowed to even speak, not just be present. I don't know, it's very interesting.
But there are many
I think
things
it makes for, yes, it makes for a very interesting discussion.
We'll just delete this.
Okay. All right. Next paragraph.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Spiritual warfare. So it's like, where does it take place? Where was the council? Someone asked me, where was the council?
In the heavens.
In the heavens. So where's the heavens?
I don't know where the heavens. I don't think it's the physical location. I don't think heaven is up and hell is.
But it's like what? I don't know. I'm just thinking. So I
Might be here. Hell or heaven might be right here, but in a different dimension. And we're sitting right here, but you don't know. So whatever the realm of the spirit is, it's just not this physical place where we are.
Don't blame me, I'm messed up the metrics.
Okay. All right, next paragraph.
The God of heaven took up the challenge of the evil one, giving him permission to take away all the mercies that he supposed to be the props of Job's integrity, and to pull down all his resources and see whether Job himself could stand without them. In consequence of this, all Job's wealth went in one black day, and not even a child was left to whisper comfort.
All right. So again, like I said, whenever we read a verse like or a paragraph like this, your question that comes to your mind is why. But I always remember how Paul ended in, that famous Romans 9:11. At the end of the day, you can ask why, but you have to get to a point where you say, who are you, O man? Because truly, the problem is if you don't get to who are you, O man, is that you are going to end up setting your reason. So typically, I remember one day, I can never forget one day, I was reading to a lady, a white lady, and I was like, I can't believe in God. That's how I was thinking. He's the most evil person I've ever, as in she was just like saying that if you had, but you know what she has done? She has put up a framework of what can be right and wrong in our own understanding and wants to measure God by that standard. The same way like the fish. So imagine your chicken. You eat chicken, huh? Yeah, I mean, imagine the chicken having a conversation with you and just saying, you're a wicked person. It's like, what am I a wicked person? Say, how can you what have I done for you? That you go, you kill me, you kill my wife, you kill my children, you kill us, you eat us, you fry us. What have we done for you? But again, it's a stupid act, but it's just to show you that you and the chicken can't have a conversation because the moral universe is the chicken does not understand enough what you understand, the same way that we know so little about God. And it's because yeah, we think so. All right. So we think so little of who God is, and we think so highly of ourselves and our ability to figure out things and understand things. Look, if God, who gave Job all that he gave him, decided to take it away, Job's answer is the right answer. The Lord gives, the Lord takes. Blessed is the one. But again, it's easy to say it in Bible studies like this. But whenever we have those questions, whenever you have those questions come up in your mind, at the end of the day, trying to find out why does not help you. The why has anybody ever found out the why and was helped? Like, okay. But because the truth is, you would never find out the whys. You get what I mean? So it's the sense of which faith is trust. The same way that if you were to come home and maybe you live with your wife and you had come home and you find out that your wife has taken, maybe you had one money in the drawer, your wife has taken it. You won't, if you truly love your wife, you won't be like, she's stealing my money or something. You know, there must be some reason why she has taken that money. That would be the presumption. Abi? The presumption would be towards, and then when later you can now ask and say, the same presumption towards God should be to give him, so to speak, the benefit of the doubt. But most times we struggle. So it's that sense of we need to pray that God will help us to grow in trusting him. And when we don't understand, we give a presumption of the doubt and say one day, either in this world or the next, things will become clear. All right.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
You said sometimes we never know why, or you said we never just know why. Is that a generalization? Because I think sometimes after whatever has happened in our lives has happened, later on down the road, we tend to see the reasons, or maybe that is by our own understanding why God allowed certain things to happen. Way after the fact, we look back and say, oh, so probably this is why this happened. God wanted this, or this. God wanted to do this for this to happen. I think sometimes God gives us the grace later on down the road to see why.
So sometimes God gives us the grace to see part of the reason why he allowed what to happen. Okay, so let me give you, have you ever wondered when Paul was writing in 1 Corinthians, I think it was 2 Corinthians 9, when he was talking about the fact that he went to the third heaven. And he was like, when he was trying to describe it, I saw a man and he said something. He said, he said two things. He said things that are not lawful to this. And then he said things that he went and said some things that cannot be described. The point is, so the best way to think about how God's relationship with us is to imagine you have a cousin who is from your village, not your village, the village that they have never seen a television, and you bring them to Lagos, never seen a television before, and then you play your television for him. And can you explain to him how it works? So you tell him, first of all, there's something called electricity. Try and explain electricity. There's somewhere in Lokoja, they are generating power. Something is rolling in Lokoja, and then the wires bring it to Lagos. And then when the wires bring it to Lagos, somehow I'm able to, then it converts it. And that's just, then you have to explain to him how broadcast works. You know how, there's a television station somewhere and it's beaming. By the time you try, you would give
Never understand.
Sorry, what do you say?
I say you will probably be more confused.
Exactly. So the point is, sometimes when we're trying to understand what God is doing, in a sense, you can get some of the idea, but again, you have to be careful because it's you assuming that is the lesson. Obviously, there's a sense in which and most times you're probably right that is part of the reason, but you can't always be sure that is the complete reason, what God was trying to achieve in your life, because most things we learn, you don't even know, you don't even remember you learned, and so that's why I say it's dangerous too, because sometimes when we think about, I know why God took me through that, and then maybe you thought it to go out this way and it didn't turn out this way. Okay, maybe God is passing me through this season to make me a better man. So when I marry that woman, and then that woman I thought you will marry. So the point of when you rest on those things too much, sometimes it can tend to disappoint. That's why I think it's best to just wait till we get to glory, and then everything becomes clear. I agree with you. I'm not saying we don't get some clarity. I'm just saying we want to be careful. We don't presume too much that we know all the reasons why God only allowed.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
I was thinking that we could just read, like, taking these questions.
Okay.
Maybe just read all the test points. Then you ask the question. If we now have questions in between, because actually it's meant the questions are meant for us to go through them.
Okay, so you are right. I actually wanted to do the question. But the problem is that sometimes it's hard to tie the question to a particular paragraph. But what I'll do is that for next week, I'll try better to try and use the question as discussion starters. I'll try better next week to tie it. So please just permit for this week, and maybe next week I'll bring the ones where we use the question as part of to redig our memory about what we learned today, and then we'll continue. But thanks, it's a good point. All right, please go on.
A second interview between the Lord and his fallen angel took place in Job 2, verses 1-6. Job was again the subject of conversation, and the Great One, defied by Satan, permitted him even to touch Job in his bone and in his flesh, till the prince became worse than a pauper. He who was rich and happy became poor and wretched, filled with disease from head to foot, and scraped himself with a miserable potsherd to gain a poor relief from his pain.
I think the first time I read the book of Job, what struck me was that again, the second, you could almost tolerate the first one, but the second one, you'd be like, what point if Satan had not proved this point, God could have said, you have proved your point. Why do we have to do this again? But we don't know why, but God decided to. The only thing God said is that you can't kill this man. That's the only thing God will do. You cannot kill this man. The first time, Satan seemed to have gone gently, but this time he went and he just, because maybe, August when Job had fallen his hand, so he really did him very badly and just took away everything he could take away from you, apart from taking away his life, as God said he shouldn't take. So again, it's one of those things that Job started out and look at where he fell to, and all because God wanted to show that God knew that that Job would be faithful even in that trial. And so again, God allowed Job to be tested and tried in this year.
So one of the things that's just striking my heart is the fact that even though fallen, the devil was still having an interaction with God, but it wasn't an interaction that was ultimately going to lead him to salvation of his own soul and all that. And the whole nonsense gets out there when people talk about as a believer, God ought to be speaking to you. There are a lot of believers, of course, who never had the privilege of interacting with God this way, who are nevertheless saved. But I'm just trying to look at the quest of always wanting to hear the voice of God. So of what benefit is hearing the voice of God in quotes, and then without a transformation in your own life? Because this is the devil is having, so to say, is enjoying a privilege that many of us are not enjoying. When there are many unbelievers I've interacted with, they talk about how their dreams always come to pass.
Yeah.
So, and they are not lying.
Yeah.
Many of them are not lying. So somehow, I don't know how the dream come to them, whether it is the Lord, but somehow we just know that there's always a primary causality, and that is God. Every other thing is secondary. And then all of those things come, and you are not changed. You are not transformed. And that's why we should always, sing and rejoice in the grace that God has given to us. And even though we are not hearing his voice audibly, some persons, if you want to hear the voice of God audibly, read the Bible aloud. So even though we are not hearing the voice of God audibly, but as we behold him in the scriptures, as we hear this Bible being preached to us, we are transformed. And we are promised of meeting the Lord one day. Oh, behold him face to face. And this voice that we are trying to see the voice of God, see another person who will hear it clearly, as our brother currently is hearing.
And the truth is, often, we put a large emphasis on Rema, so to speak. You got what I mean? On just knowledge, just knowing things and knowing. But like you rightly pointed out, what have we done with the ones we've heard before? So you just want to keep hearing more, knowing more, and many times the Bible. So one of the things I've never understood, thinking about it now, is even if God speaks to people, is the way people are so proud to say, the Lord told me. It's just so, because you don't see Paul talking that way. It's there's almost sort of like you want to show people, I have a greater relationship with God than you.
Yes.
It almost seems to be that's what it's about. Again, I don't want to judge people's hearts, but you also just, because it's just too casually said, too easily said and just said plenty. What is it?
I had a trip with that girl. And God was in the realm, and then she was speaking to God in heaven, and then God was saying something like, why is because something like you are used to hearing me, and that is why you not notice when I was saying this. That means the relationship has become so casual. You are used to hearing me that, and then
it sounds funny, but it's not, because it's just because the sense in which yeah okay, let's go on next, please go on.
Can I say something?
Please, Karen.
Okay, I have sort of a question.
Okay.
Can we say that the devil is just like he's powerless, and he's just as powerless as human beings, just as ignorant and as foolish as us, because because like in Corinthians, when Paul says that he talks about the what's it the whatever of this world, that had they known, they would not. I don't know whether that means actual human beings or that means demons, but had they known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory, because by doing that, they had actually sealed their own fate. So, I mean, which we also are very foolish. We don't see the end of things, you know. We think this is the best way to go. You know, I mean, so for instance, I would have never thought that, like, one of the most faithful and one of the most hardworking church members, I never thought his death is what will even, I thought we would be so broken, we'll be so, I mean, I feel like if the devil really wants, let's even say this death was caused by the devil, if he wanted to, it would have been better to take the laziest person. Nobody would feel it. I don't know. So, hello?
Yeah, I understand you. I'm listening.
Yeah, so, I mean, can't he see that the more he's pushing for Job, like, it's not going to end well for him, the devil? And today we have Job's example to encourage us. Like, once again, he has sort of sealed his own fate.
Karen, it's a good question. And I think you're asking two separate questions. So the first question you're asking is, what does the devil know and what can the devil do? So the devil is not omnipotent and is not omniscient. So he doesn't have all power and doesn't have all knowledge. But the devil has been alive for a very long time. And exactly. I like what Humphrey said. He has a lot of data points.
But does he not learn? Does he not know that
Hold on. So he has a lot of data points, and the devil is very powerful. He has powers. He's just not as powerful as he has supernatural powers. He can do many bad things. Many miracles are performed. Satan gives, because when you see the book of Revelation, Satan gives of his powers to people and they can do miracles and do many things. So he has power. Now, Karen, the devil is successful in an overwhelming majority of cases. You hear what I said? The devil is successful in the majority of cases. Again, look, I don't know how many people are going to heaven, but Jesus said, narrow is the way and straight the gate that leads to life, and few find it. That means only that few escape this devil. Karen, do you understand what I'm saying? So the devil, if he's looking at statistics, he thinks he is actually what, do you get what I mean? So if it's a numbers game,
yes, I understand.
His numbers are high and his success ratio is high. And if he doesn't try Job, how will he know whether Job will fall? That's the key. You get what I mean? So that is the sense that you and I can read Job and we know Job would not fall, did not fall. But before this trial, there's no way Satan, and it doesn't lose anything. I mean, it's Job that loses anything. Satan doesn't lose anything.
But does Satan not know God? That if God is telling you, okay, try this guy, then God knows that the guy will overcome.
He will try his luck now. I mean, think about the nature of Satan. Satan is a malevolent person. He's an evil being. Even if Job doesn't fall, at least he'll have gotten some pleasure from the suffering that Job went through.
Okay.
And it cost him nothing. Yes.
Just to chip in that, you should also understand that Satan is not the way he was before he fell. His mind is broken too. He's corrupted by sin, and he's not thinking straight.
I don't know about depression. But yeah.
Okay, so I think, let me just say the last one. We are encouraged in the book of, I think, Matthew, where God told his disciples that they should be as wise as serpents. And that says a lot. And then where the Bible also remarked about Daniel and said he's wiser than Daniel. And then we know that Daniel was one of the wisest persons that walked on 2 feet. And another point I also want to make is that it's not always every time that the devil desires to kill. Sometimes he desires to see. So the Bible says, Jesus Christ told Peter, the devil has desired to see your spirit. So it is he has desired to kill you. It is he has desired to do another thing, but just to sift you to the kind of. So you, in that line, you cannot also immediately say that it is because of the devil's lack of knowledge of the integrity of Job that made him to do what he did. And did the devil shame Job? Actually, he did. So, and then Job also came to the point where in the latter days of his life, he saw how vile his own life is because he uttered many, many things. And then he repented. Yeah. And the life of a believer is that of repentance. So we may always have said Job was a perfect man until those things unfolded. We're able to also see how the best of men are men at best and all that. So I just think that in the providence of God, he allowed that to happen for our own learning so that we don't also put trust, so much trust in our fellow human beings, but God alone.
Oh, sorry, so from where you say, are we also saying the devil knows those that say?
No, I don't think so.
So because, yeah.
No. So that's why I say it never has to. So my own reason of when he said he wants to sift Peter is like, you know what sifting is? You know what sifting is? Sifting is what you used to do with beans. Remember what you do with beans? No, that's you are talking about. You are talking about. So there are different process. You are thinking about what's the winnowing. That's not winnowing. Shifting is after winnowing. So after you winnowed, it's exactly what happen to your beans. What is happening in your beans is that 5% of it is dirty, or less than 5%, depending on where you buy it. So it's harder to find, but there's death in it. So Satan is saying, I can find something in Peter. It's not a lot, there might not be, but inside that thing, I'll find something. So it's sort of like God giving Peter to him to say, okay. So it's looking, so it's harder. It's not like, when you're, what's that we know, that one is, there's a lot of that you can see, but shifting is, you have to look, but then you can find. Yeah.
Can I add this? So when Satan says that he wants to sift Peter like this, then Jesus says to Peter, I've prayed for you that when you are having a recover, when you recover, meaning that don't worry, you're going to fall.
Yes, and he was very proud of you.
I'm sure the devil was not like thinking he not succeed. I'm sure he has successfully formed many great men. Living a life of integrity.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like that persevering grace. It's God that will help people to persevere. If not, he has had many great success, like you say, he continues to have great success in making people that we thought were good people. When it comes to
and I think like basically even that's the whole point of the spiritual warfare and ultimately, like we see examples also of people like James, examples, and the Apostle Paul was giving that warning to Timothy. That's so.
And Jane also shows us that we can sustain one and can cover us. Another one, if you all this from the serpent and for God to cover them. But God don't punish them, but he covered them rightly with animal skin. It's almost like saying man is fallen already. Okay. So God is the one sustaining us.
So again, so our focus should not be on our own strength. And I think that's the lesson we should take from Peter, because Peter's focus was his known strength. Because Jesus kept warning him many times. Just when you betray me, said, if everybody betray you, I won't betray you. Just said to that chef, he said, no. He just kept saying, and so I think that is part of why God had to allow him to be shifted, to humble him. But sometimes when you fall, you are humble, you realize that you actually thought you actually realize that you are proud. You think of yourself that you can maintain and do many things until you realize that actually I can't do that thing I thought I would do. And then a Christian, the unbeliever, like Judas, can't recover and feels I should go. But a Christian knows that, where do I find strength now? I find it in God. I have to put my faith in God and not in myself. Yeah.
So what I also want to say is, whenever we talk about this trial of Job, we always talk about Satan, as though he was a kind of like maybe a host of heaven was for us. Then somehow the devil was able to come in. But when we realize that known to God is all his word from beginning to the end, this is ultimately what God was projecting Job for his own glory. That is why he allowed Satan into that assembly. And he also allowed him to make that certain request that he made. And he also granted him the desire of his heart. Because it's not as though maybe Satan forced and then passed through the armies of heaven to come in. No, he came in because God allowed him. And then, just for us to see Job, this is a man who is worthy of emulation in many things. But you don't have to look to him. There is one who is greater than Job. Because if you are to look to Job, this is what the best of us can become under the furnace of fire. You will start talking rubbish. You get. So we see the life of Job, not so much so as what the devil did and how he was able to prevail, as to see the glory of God in displaying his grace over a weak vessel who in his own wisdom allowed to enjoy some measure of grace, and then still see how that grace, if he's to lean on his own strength or whatever, he will still fall and falter. How ultimately it is the Lord that preserves, and then at the latter end will always be far better than the beginning.
Sorry, does it also, does it one allow? Does it also mean that God allows the devil to come to his presence?
We don't know. I mean, God is present.
How would you see it as the context where you can't come in there without just
That's
what you're asking about.
Yeah. But I'm safe because that's what I'm saying.
So like Joseph is saying that it's written for us to see that even the best of men are still but there's still so much we can learn from the life of Job. It's that because what we still consider is integrity and how much how it helps from and we can still learn from the advice he was getting for his friends. So next time when our lip self will not be quick to attack somebody that is down and all those things, there's so much we learn from their life. So as you see the authority of God, working over everything, there's still so much to learn about what's happening.
Karen, did we help you at all before we go on?
Oh, yes. Very helpful. Sorry, I joined a bit late, but I think Brad Peter was saying something about whether the devil still goes to God to ask for us today. I don't know. I think I heard or somebody talk about it. Does this still happen?
So we had a different opinion. My own opinion is that that time where Satan can go directly into the presence of God is over. That's my own understanding.
Thank God.
So sorry, Deacon Wale, I want to come.
I don't think.
Hello?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say was that so whether it is over or whether it still continues. So I was saying that whether it is over or whether it still continues, right? We still, if it still continues, we still face trials one way or another, right? Because in Job's own situation, it was sickness, he lost all his possessions, all his property, and all of that. And in our own ways, we face our own, trials and, temptations. It can be, Satan going to say, and God is saying, have you considered my servant, Deacon Wale, and all of that. Or it could just be that, it could just be that, God has just, hello?
I'm listening.
Yes, it could just be that. Wait. Sorry, it could just be that we are just facing our own. There might not really, what I'm getting at is that there might not really be any need for us to exactly qualify where it is coming from, whether it's actually Satan who is going, because the end point is kind of the same. And I think for us, it is to, help us grow in our own,
Yes.
individual ways.
And I think
But
so regardless
it's a
of
bit
whether,
different.
sorry?
But it's a bit different when the devil goes and asks after you specifically. That's a bit too much.
Well, I mean, the thing is that we would, God will allow many things to happen to us. So whether it's explicitly or implicitly, God allows things. But then the point of it all is still for us to trust God. The same way God kept Job, God will keep us, and His own there.
And those periods of Job, where he was undergoing these things, we could see that once kept him, there was no way. I couldn't think of anything where he even mentioned about losing his wealth, how it had affected him. I can't really see where he mentioned it, but I think he hinted on his health when he's concerned his health. That was where he hinted. And also, you could see that what sustains him was the knowledge of God, because sometimes he pleaded for a mediator, someone who will speak on his behalf. And also, in replying to one of his friends, where he said, to him belong, that is in chapter 12, verse 16, to him belongs strength and sight, both deceit and deceiver are his. He leads rulers away strict and makes full of judges. And many other things, he said, you see that his knowledge of how God is ruling the world and how God is also in control of whatever is happening to people. And there is this knowledge that you can see that, but though he said some other things, his things were brought out, and then he repented of them, and then you could see that even in that, his sustenance within those periods were things he know about God and things, some personal experience, things he know about God.
And
Yes, it's something that sometimes online. That when people want to come closer,
they come.
because they don't repeat everything. People online,
yeah. Okay. I was even thinking of buying a mic once, but yeah, where's the money? Okay. Let's see where we can get to today. So let's just go on. Please, could you read, Sean? Could you read for us just read up to point 2, from let us till the end of 1.
Okay. Let us see in this the changeableness of all earthly things. He hath founded it upon the floods. Psalm 24, verse 2 is David's description of this world. And if it be founded on the floods, can you wonder that it often changes? Put not your trust in anything beneath the stars. Remember that change is written on the forefront of nature. Say not, therefore, I am secure. I shall never be moved. The glance of Jehovah's eye can shake you into dust. Set your affection on things above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Colossians 3, verse 1 to 2. And let your heart and your treasure be where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, nor thieves break through and steal. Matthew 6, verse 20. Do I continue?
Yeah, the next part.
This is not, however, our subject today. Accept this much as merely an introduction to our main discourse. The Lord said to Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? Let us deliberate. In what sense the devil may be said to consider the people of God? What is it that he considers about them? the truth that one far above Satan considers us in a higher sense.
Right. So what we are seeing in this paragraph is two things. First of all, is in that paragraph where Jesus talks about in Matthew 6, when he talks about treasure, he says something about treasures. He says, if it's soft treasure, what happens? Moths. I'm sure you've all seen moth-eating clothing. I'm sure you've all been to the place where maybe what you don't wear in 6 months. Now, in the days before camphor, now it's better with camphor. People pour camphor, but in the days before camphor, you just come and lift it up and it's just dust, literally. Or if it's something hard, rust would destroy it. And even if it's you throw your best, what thieves. So his point is this: the things we gather here are always on that thread. You have to spend a lot of money to maintain what you gather here, because and so the point of this is just on the changeability of treasures, of whatever we think we've done to protect ourselves from everything. And so that's why he says, put not your trust in anything under the stars, which is basically the message. And then where should you put your trust? Colossians 3:1-2 says, set your affections on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And that's really what it means to be heavenly minded, because the truth is, as you go out of here today, people would encourage you to put your mind on things of the world. And there's a sense in which you have to put your mind on things of this world. For those of us who are husbands and fathers, you have to pay school fees, you have to pay rent. You have to worry about how you get fuel. You have to do all of those things. So there's a sense in which the Bible is not telling you to neglect your responsibilities here. The Bible is telling you there's a way in which the unsaved people live. And what is that way? They don't see, that is all their attention. You are doing that because you sort of like think of someone who, what would be a good example? Think of someone who is a drunkard or somebody who is on drugs. And when a functional drug addict or a drunkard, it's functional in the office. But while he's in the office, what's he looking forward to? Just looking forward to, let me just finish, go and get my high. You know what I mean? So there's a way in which he might do his work, he does everything, but that is not where his heart is. His heart is in that. Is among those his friends where they can just go and just chill and whatnot. So again, the point is, it's not so much that you don't do all these things, but where your heart is, where your mind is, where your affection is, where you want to spend your time and energy and resources. So again, that's what the Bible is telling us, that you don't want to. So if you're not saying, okay, I'm happy if, I'm sure if you ask people, when will you be happy? Or what will make you happy? Or what are you aspiring to? Some people, they are thinking of when they'll buy their car. Some people that have cars, they're thinking of when they'll buy X car. Some people that are renting is when they move to this area. I can never forget my uncle. The guy is well to do. And then I went to meet him, and I was just like, hi, your house was like, hi. The guy lives in the GRA, very big as the guy, have to move people, So I have to move people. It's just funny to me when I was just like, this guy is not even satisfied, but that's how the human heart is. You're always thinking, what's the next level? What's the next thing? What's the next? You know what I mean? So again, it's just not to get sucked into. So whether most of us were in the cemetery on Saturday. So the people there, you saw all those those ones in the private part. They were living in big houses. How big was their grave? Same size. Everybody's grave is the same size. Would they give you bigger land? They don't give you bigger land. So the point is, all these things we are even gathering and thinking and fighting about, and that is the foolish thing about human life. We all know we will die, but somehow that knowledge is not useful to the unbeliever. Do you get what I mean? Because I remember when I left the cemetery, I went and I saw my siblings, and I was just talking to them. I was just trying to even get them to be sober. I just telling them about all the things we saw in the graveyard. One of them was like, no, all those things. I was telling how they just throw people's body out. No, you just go and buy private on 3 million. Okay, so that 3 million is fine. You get the point is, okay, go through your money. Well, what is the benefit? There's nothing. You know what I mean?
That was very fine.
Yes,
I could even sleep there.
yeah, look at the vault.
Share the gospel, send the bad news, and know the good news. Being bad naive, it's just like I said the culture was frustrated. But like you don't get the point. Like what I just said. People don't get the point. Their mind is far from. You don't even get the point of reality of death and life and where they will live eternity, and they don't care. It's sad.
They're dead.
Hardness, yes.
Yes.
Let me borrow for Washa's words. You mean God loves me? I love him too. And I can have him and still have my dreams. So for some people, we have not taken the path that where God will help them achieve that their Eldorado sort of way. So because you haven't taken it, they are not going to listen to you. And it is what prosperity teachers. It's as simple as that. It's just to come and take you and tell you that God will actually help you achieve that Eldorado. And all this. So when we preach the gospel, for some it is something they are waiting for you to actually get to that point where you say, yeah, you can help me achieve this. You can help me achieve this, this place where I want to be, or this level where I want to be. That's basically what they are waiting for you to actually come to that point. So and it's very difficult sharing the gospel.
It's like this. You know this like as I am, like somebody comes, a lawyer comes to tell me that I have an inheritance of maybe just 10 million somewhere now. That's it's my own. Whatever I will think, I'll keep it down to hear you well. But the gospel, which is the greatest inheritance, like you say, like you're sharing, people are not like the one that is doing what to do is just waiting for you to finish and be going. This is the greatest word, this is the greatest inheritance. But people are like,
they have gone through a lot. I was trying to share a trust with someone and he said, George, I don't want to say, okay, can you just try to explain to me? Just try and give me an idea why you don't want to have anything. Say, I don't want, just go. I just don't want, George, I will not again. I just try, at least just give me a hint of what could have brought this kind of discourse, this kind of discourse. And the guy was, when he raised his voice again, so sometimes people have been in that they don't, it's so hard for them to give that.
I think it's a lie. I think it's our heart.
I think so too. I agree with you.
Because people know the Bible is true. They might just look for a bad person to say this bad person that is going to be Christian, but they know the Bible is true. But why don't they go?
But think about it this way. Let me say why I agree with Richard. Because when people complain about a church, I don't go to church again because of this pastor. So ask them, for the men among them, when you were, they may have been jilted by 5 women, but they still went to the 6th woman. Why didn't they say, women are bad? You get what I mean? I'll stop talking to any woman. You get my point? So the point is, yes, I'm not trying to downplay the fact that people have been hurt and whatnot. But the point is, when people stay in that hurt and refuse, you know what I mean, to move on. Because because you and I, many of us came from bad churches. Many of us came from churches where we weren't fed. Why didn't we just say, those churches were bad, we are done with God? You get my point? Yeah, but you get my point. But at some point, you have to say, okay, this one is not good, but like he was saying, I know the word of God. I want to try and find the one that is good. Or even I want to start my own. Even if I don't find anybody, let me stay in my house and read my Bible. I mean, there are people there was some people that will tell you, I'll just stay in my house and read my Bible. Yeah.
My answer to that would the divine verdict against humanity that no one seeks after. No one is looking for them. So, and Jesus said, whoever seeks, will find. Somehow God has a way of, if you're really seeking, because it happened to me, I completely given up on Christianity, I turned away. So whoever is seeking, you're seeking that God, God will find a way. God will find a way.
Thank you for that encouragement. All right, let's see how much we can get to number 2. Okay? No. Okay. Yes, go on.
So, what Joseph suggested
about the question.
So they made it very easy. The thing is a section.
Okay, so we say number 1. Okay, then we look at the question 1. Okay, so let's see the question for 1. All right. So Joseph, read the first question. Let me think for the people who are online.
What do we learn about Satan that is implied from going to and fro throughout the earth?
Yes. So does anybody want, I think you already hinted about some of it.
Yes, so we talked about, even Spurgeon explained it that he's unhindered. So the devil exercises so much dominion over the populace of the earth. So there's no place that you say that he's bound. Even in the very church, the devil comes to our pulpit and say, stop, through the mouth of the preacher and go and all that. So he has that walking to and fro means there's nothing that keeps him. So the only person that goes to and fro is, first of all, someone that is not in chain, because a lot of people are bounded with the devil and then still moving to and fro. And then another thing also is that, so first, just that he's not in chain. Another one is that there's no one that can chain him on earth. Another one also is that in the wisdom of God, he has decided not to chain him for now until the appointed time. So,
but that thing, that part that you're talking about, whatever you buy, it's not the same.
Yes,
Yes, exactly. So I don't even know where the idea of buying is.
I wanted to add, that's why nobody has been able to bind him. Because he himself knows that you're misquoting the scripture. All right, so I wanted to add to what Joseph said, to say that if these 2 and 1, I think is in a way what Peter is referencing in the New Testament and likens the devil to a lion, to a prowling lion that's looking for prey. So I always think of it as him being restless, one, and secondly being dangerous in the sense that he's not walking to and fro to bless the world. Yeah. He's walking to and fro to sow destruction. Like scripture says, like Jesus came to that the works of the devil might be destroyed. He's going to, he's successfully built this global rat trap where if God doesn't help you, you cannot be righteous here. So that's his business. That's what he goes about doing.
The Jezebel, the great Jezebel.
So the question is, what we learn? The question is what we learn. So describe this. What did we learn?
Let me complete it by adding what Peter said. He resists. How did he resist? I'm talking about it. Yes. Huh?
So that's James.
Was that James?
Yes.
Okay,
So James was the one that talked about it.
Okay, basically, I think for me, what I've learned is that if he's crawling about like that, he's my enemy. I think of it like, for example, I've seen a hyena on the street before.
Oh, really?
Yes. But not once. Thank you for the question. But he was in chains, right? So if it's just for us to not go to sleep, that you're not in El Dorado as a Christian, right? You are in enemy territory, you are behind enemy lines, and your enemy is prowling about, is looking for you, is looking for ways to undermine the Christian faith, looking for ways to knock you off your feet, that kind of thing.
Doesn't give up.
So he doesn't give up.
Okay, I think to consider the first question, we have to look at within the context of that conversation.
Can I come close to the mic? Because people online.
We have to look at it within the context of that conversation. Satan was so confident about his ability to array his territory that he was going to be shocked that there's actually a man with that kind of resume after God has read it to him. Of course, when we look at that dispensation, it was the Old Testament. Christ was yet to fully come to atone for us. And we say that he actually might be justified trying to think that there is no other person that could have escaped his attention. Only to realize that in the actual sense, he had missed this guy. Now, look at us today under the cover of Christ. And the question is, what do we learn about Satan that is implied from his going to and fro throughout life? If it is without grace, I'm not too sure if those of us that are here today would have that kind of testimony about us from God. And that's a sobering truth, that if we pair ourselves with Job, we measure up to that kind of testimony. So that's one of the things I learned from that conversation.
Job was someone that God could testify about. Yes.
Yeah, so another thing I also see that in the business of the devil, he's not restless. So there's no believer because he's not looking for comfort. His comfort indeed is to dwell in people's hearts. When he sees, if the place is beautiful, go and bring 10 more, 7 more weekend in devils and they're coming. So he's always working. So another thing also we can learn is that, you know, when God said, have you considered my servant Job? He didn't ask him which one, where did he live? He had exact information about it. He just started talking. Is it not because you have made it? It's not because you have made it. It's not because you have. So the devil knows us in a sense. That's why even what Sister Karen said before, the question she was asking, we do not know ourselves as much as the devil do know us. So yes,
a record of everything we have done.
So yes, what is accused of?
It was C H Lewis that said, the devil doesn't know everything. But imagine that for your life, I've seen everything you ever said, everything you ever done. No, he doesn't know what you think. He has seen everything you ever said and everything you ever done, and he has a record of it. Imagine how much that person knows about you. Because there's nobody on earth that knows. You can't remember 5% of what you've said, but he can remember everything you've said and done. So he is able to evaluate people very well.
And anybody who has that kind of information is a formidable enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Those are your weaknesses.
He knows that man is fallen from great shape. So he knows that they are corrupt already. He's certain. So if he was too certain of this, about Job, he was too sure.
Yes. So
he's not God, he's gone.
Beyond his general knowledge, I think what the Deacon trying to say is that he has your file. And that's what makes him very effective. If he comes for you, trust me, you know, the Lord will just pray for you that when you stand up.
He's not omniscient.
Yes, so he's not.
No. He has agents.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yes, that's what we mean.
Locality.
Of course, it's not everywhere.
So can we say that technology became the devil? There's some data analysts.
Well, I wouldn't say so, but I would say that the way technology is being used to promote sin is definitely Satan's working.
It's an medium of corruption.
The devil also knows our peculiar weaknesses. So he knows what to use to tempt one person.
He doesn't need 5 minutes.
Yes, he cannot use what's this guy's name? Monk to tempt Samson. You know, it's a movie. He's a woman that wants to. The devil has a use to woman. If he's free them, he will jump and pass in the name of Christ. The devil has it has to be money.
All right. So the second question: what was the result of Satan's first conversation with God about Job? I mean, it's straightforward.
God was for me.
Sorry? God was not for me. Yes, God allowed God to
gave permission for him to go and attack.
But in a sense, God also was the one. So we see there God's sovereignty also, you know, because it was God that gave, and God also set the limits what he could do, what he was allowed to touch and what he was not allowed to touch. So
the question you asked, I think, is we'll get the full answer when we read this number two. Because the one we just answered is the introduction. So the intro is number one. So it is we'll get the full answer.
Okay, number two. Yeah. Okay, so that's okay. What I'll just do the next time is no, I don't think so. For introduction. All this because we already know what happened. The rest is yes.
I think to have the results first conversation, we didn't just stop at God giving permission to Satan to attack Job. I think it's fair on Job to say that he made an epic. His response was epic. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. He did not sin. And Scripture records that in all this, Job did not sin against the Lord.
Sorry? No. So what you have to know about Job is, so there's the attack, then there's the visit of the friend, then there's the conversation with the friend. Job did not speak right about God with his friend. He was trying to justify himself, not God. So that's why God told him, he says, would you put me in the wrong to justify yourself? Because his friend put him in the box and said, look, you're a sinner. God cannot be wrong. That's what his friend said. So if God cannot be wrong, and God cannot punish people if they've not done something wrong, and God is punishing you, and God cannot be wrong, so you must be wrong. And so Job said, no, I'm not wrong. I can't say about God, but me, I know I've not done anything. So that's where the trap he fell into, because of the way the friend defined the problem. So in order to justify himself, was willing to throw God under the bus, like they say, yeah.
So that means God can punish you and you're not wrong.
Yes. God can allow, because that's exactly what happened. Everything that happened to Job was not because he was wrong. And that is why we're saying that when we study Job, we're saying that's the main lesson from the book of Job, that you cannot gauge someone's spirituality or his righteousness by what he has or does not have. That's really the connection between blessing and suffering and righteousness is not one-to-one. But we like to think it's one-to-one. Especially when we are doing well, we like to think that we are doing well because God has an high opinion of us. That's really what we like to think. So, but then sometimes God, for many reasons, allows people to do well.
Yeah, so I also think that trials test our theology. So this is what I mean. Job's theology was sound when first thing he talked very well, as he called it epic. But as the thing persisted, started shifting ground, and it happened to Hugh Latman, when the other guys were, Thomas Cranmer, when the other guys were, because they were arrested, there were 3 of them, they still shared fellowship and then encouraging themselves. Mary just killed the 2 other ones, allowed him in the prison for months, and that's loneliness, hunger, and the rest of them. She now came and he gave in. And thank God that he recovered and all that. So, this thing, you still see God's promoting his grace and his ability to keep us. So that's why theologians will always say that it is not so much as we holding God that we are preserved, as it is that he himself is the one that is holding us. Because at some point, there were things that Job, you don't want to just talk about Job, and then there were things that he said, not only one thing, there are many things that he said. He even started accusing God, that you say if a believer dies in that state of this thing without grace, hello, because there were certain things he was saying against God himself. And that's why when God came, I started threatening him, come and answer me and all that and all that. So it is ultimately the preserving grace of God that keeps us while we pass through trials. Our language will change, but the grace of God never changes.
Amen. And I want to add that when I read Job, I see that grace, and I believe very strongly that it is on the strength of that grace that God allowed Satan to go and attack Job. Not because he was sure that Job would withstand Satan, but because he knew that I will hold him and nothing you do will shake him.
God only sets those, whoever God brings out to be considered, is someone that he knows ultimately would stand, because God can never lose a battle.
Right, so I think we already sort of answered B. Does anybody have anything else to add about 2B? 2B. Anything additional to add? Yes, sir.
That's a question. You mentioned, let me see one now saying that you doing well, and does not directly mean that it's because you are righteous.
Yes.
I would like you to please kindly.
Okay. Sorry. What's your name?
Mena.
Mena. Okay, so who is the richest man in Nigeria today? Who is the second richest man in Nigeria? Rabiu, was the guy who will be you? Yeah. So those two men, are they righteous men? So righteous in the sense of being a Christian, they are not Christians, they are not following God. So in that sense, they cannot be righteous men. So take the 10 wealthiest politicians in Nigeria. Most of them got their money from stealing. Their children go to school, good schools, their children do well, their children marry, nothing happens to them. They live, they die. Abi? Because if you look at Nigeria, if you look at many of the elites in Nigeria, first generation politicians, military people that came over, the children they're the ones in the commanding heights and everywhere. So the point is, if you just look at life, and if you just look at what is right and wrong in our country, Nigeria, the people that do well in this country, let me tell you the people that do well in this country. People that do well in this country are the people that they know how to bend the rules. Most people. Obviously, I'm not saying some people don't do it, but the vast majority of people, if you go out and do business and interact with people, the people that generally do well are people that they sort of know the rules, they know the way the game is played in Nigeria, and then they do it. So again, the point is, God allows these things. It's not like God is sleeping and is just watching Nigeria happening. So what we are saying is, at the last day, on Judgment Day, there will be an accounting. Just the same way, like you had exam, and then at the end exam, because the people in your class, they used to talk a lot. They will say, I've scattered the exam. I can never forget one guy. I can never forget that guy. I finished one exam. I knew I was going to fail the exam. And I was just asking, and the guy was like, no, I was crying. And the guy was like, no, don't cry, don't worry, me too. That exam was hard. And I knew this guy is very, that exam, I'm not even sure I can pass it. That guy got 90 something. And the guy was so with that. I'm not even sure. I was so angry. But I said, this guy's a wicked guy. There's no way you can say you're not sure you get it. But the point I'm trying to make is, you see, you can't know until. So we let God judge. What we're saying is that let's not, but we in our own heart, we sort of think, God should, if you are serving God, God should give us these things. But God knows us and He knows what is good for us. What I'm just trying to say basically is that we should not measure our spiritual well-doing just by how much we have or we don't have. Sometimes we don't have much, but it doesn't mean we are not serving God. Sometimes we have a lot and doesn't mean we are serving God. It's just the way you know you're serving God is what you are doing of His commandment. Okay. People in the Bible.
No, listen, people in the Bible. Job had money, and we have people like Apostle Paul that basically did, yeah. So you have a mix of it all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason why I'm asking this question is because it kind of like struck me. So personally, I've always lived my life by the way Abraham, Jacob, Isaac lived. In the sense that one of the signs that people knew and they saw that these people actually served God was that God always responded, to their service by blessing them. Abraham sacrificed his son, almost sacrificed his son, and you will hear God saying, okay, because of this, I will bless you. And the kind of blessing that God promises or He gives to these people, who we consider to be our fathers, is such that He made sure that He said the kind of blessing He gives to them is such that the Philistines envy them. That is, another nation will actually envy you because of the kind of blessing God gives you. So I started guiding my life using that principle, that there is no way me personally will serve God and I'll be poor. Like that has to be the basis God gives and follow me. That is like my own understanding. Like if I'm going to serve you, like there was a time I actually, because I came from a very, very poor background. So I told God that if I'm going to serve you, I cannot be serving you and be struggling all my life. If you're not going to bless, let's just draw the line here. So that was my own personal conviction. And He has been following me that way. Because that's the only way I will serve Him. But I did not come to Him, just to be clear, I did not come to Him in the beginning because I started from a very young age. I did not start following Him in the beginning because I wanted something from Him.
because I love him. But as I started growing up, I started seeing responsibilities and the demands of life and all that. So what I'm trying to say is, I think I would like to really fully understand that. I think what is God actually promising this? Okay. People are praying, what is the promise?
So I'll give a short answer, and I would like to meet with you afterwards, maybe even after, apart from today, to give you a long answer. But the short answer is this. The book of Job that we were looking at, what Satan came to beat Job. Remember what God said to Satan, have you seen Job? And Satan said, Job only serves you because of what you've given him. And God says, okay, I want to prove to you that Job serves me, not because of what I'm giving him, but because he loves me. And so God allows Satan to take everything away. So the question then for you and I to think about is, would we serve God if he takes these things away? Because then if we only would serve him when we have these things, can it be, are you married? So imagine if you marry, let's say you're doing well now, and God forbid, after you marry, 2 years after things go badly, and your wife leaves you, does she love you? Exactly. Now, the reason why you say you don't think so, because when things got bad, our real love is only displayed when you stay when things got bad. So again, it's the same way for us and God. If we are only with God when things are going well, and then if God takes something away, we are not there with him, then we need to ask ourselves, do we really love God truly? Now, as to your question about what does God promise? God promises something, because even Dangote I've mentioned, in 20 years, I don't know, I'm not God. It might not be. So even though he has all the money, there's something he doesn't have. And what is that thing? He cannot get eternal life. It doesn't have that thing that everybody wants the most. Nobody wants to die because everybody wants to live forever. But that is what God promises, eternal life. And is what more than any other thing anybody can promise you. Because any other thing that you can get can go, but God gives you that one thing that cannot be taken away from you. Life eternal with him in heaven. So it's worth more than any other thing. So that's what we hold on to, that promise of God. But again, we can go more systematically, but at least just to give you a short answer. All right. Aki, you raised your hand.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just like you to clarify. When the Bible says that, when the first set of news came, Job said that the Lord gives, the Lord takes. He honored God. The Bible says that in all of this, Job did not sin or blame God. Now, in the second phase, his body was touched. The devil now said, skin for skin, a man is wanting to touch a man's affairs, another thing to touch his own body. So, and is it that Job did not carry over that same attitude he had in the first stage into the second stage? Is there something peculiar about, things that happen to our bodies? Why do you think that Job could not carry it on? Is it just that we, at the end of the day, when something reaches our body, is the devil right, bottom line, to say, when you touch his body, you will know also.
I think as a general point, the devil is, of course, the devil is right that health is wealth. Health is the most important thing. So in that general point, the devil is right that we take the issue of our health much more important than any other thing. Because when you don't have health, you don't have anything. But then I think we are not specifically told in the case of Job whether it was just as he was talking to his friends, and I think Joseph hit the nail on the head. It was in that interaction, in the length of all his trouble, because it's easy for you and I, even when something bad happens to you, as a Christian, the first response is usually orthodox. You got it? Because you still know the theology is there. You can't, okay, I'm supposed to behave in this way. But as the situation prolongs, exactly, like, okay, God will do it. It's just, God is just testing me.
Saying the Lord has given you, asking how long.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm like that now, that's like passed it. So it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's ready.
Also provoking.
Yeah, so I think everything made him not respond. He couldn't sustain his initial, response. Yeah.
So my contribution to the question I can ask is just want to use Christ, for instance. So we read of how in particular day, that's John 6, where he preached, "Eat my flesh, drink my blood." Bible said a lot of his disciples deserted him.
Yeah.
And then it is not a sweet thing, like maybe a pastor comes here and preaches something. Let's say 90% of the church leaves, just a chunk of persons are particularly the richest people in the church. Whereas when we have 72 million budget in the year, and then if someone is preached, those who, so to say, why you're trusting God, that you're looking at. Those people, they leave. So those people, they leave the church, that's so to say the kind of thing that happens to Christ in 12 remain. Peter said, "Where will we go to?" But then you see, when the matter was touching to the body of Christ, to the skin of Christ, that was examined. Here, when Bible said his heart was exceedingly sorrowful unto death, and he began to pray. So it was at that particular time that he now had to wrestle within his own skin and the will of God being done. If, of course, Christ is God, if he had gone back, he wouldn't have gone back anyway, but we're just speculating. If he had gone back, he didn't say that actually, because he didn't owe us salvation and all that. But we see at that particular time that it was touching his skin directly, because all of the accusations that the Pharisees, the Sadducees were giving to him were things that naturally was causing him sorrow. So it's more like taking away, okay, look at Peter, Judas, and they were those inner disciples, they were still sinning, following him, and obviously it causes him grief when a pastor is pastoring a church where there's obvious sin in the church, or people are just sinning secretly, and Christ is someone that if you sin secretly, he knows the secrets of your heart, and it was grieving him. But when it got directly to his head, we saw him saying, "Let this God be taken away from me." We know that it is not so much as the physical, this as the wrath of God that was coming to descend on that body of his and all that. So when we just oppose all this, we discover that there is still our skin in our bodies, in a sense, that is who we are. So it's so knitted with us that we feel pain because of this. Our spirit also does not feel pain in this part of eternity. So it is the body that feels pain, and then and that's why when some persons maybe are kidnapped, or maybe all these Boko Haram people, if they see someone who is proving stubborn, they don't kill you immediately because you become a hero. Christians will use you and write biographies and how you stood. They won't kill you without one day your ear will go, your nose will go, until if God doesn't preserve you, you will blaspheme God. If you read Church for Christ, you see how the pastor who had done a lot of things shouted and said, okay, so he was asked to use, I'll stop with this, was asked to use urine to make communion for the believers. So he used it. And then believers, they were crying, why would you do this? He said that if Christ suffered half of what he has suffered, that he would have denied God. Like the way it was crazy. But what you said is that you didn't feel what he felt. Do you get it? But I just pray that God will be able to keep us when we feel those things. When pressure comes on us. Sorry, I
wanted to add that I think you finally landed on what I wanted to say. The sense that if I ask anyone, I don't know, maybe not all of us, but have you ever been sick before? As in really, really sick? It has a mind-bending effect. Like he talked about the pastor. And what you never thought you could think or say, in such a condition is much easier.
Saying and thinking. All right, so we'll stop here because of time. We will continue next week.